Hi everyone, Suhaiba Neill here with the Full Circle Business, back with another episode of Women for Women. And today I'm excited to introduce you to Karen Colligan, who I met recently and had a great connection with. That I'm going to let her tell you her story of what she does and why she does it, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here with you and see you again. And I'm excited to speak to your audience. So, who am I? Karen Colligan. And what do I do? I started People Think in 2000. And I think the name says it all. It's really about people and how to make sure that they recognize how they can do more and be more if they spend a little time around self awareness. Who am I? Who do I want to be and how am I going to get there? So our emphasis are on leadership development and team development with a very strong focus on that new and emerging leader. And we actually have a signature program called Keep It Real Leadership that just focuses on that new leader who just got promoted and all of a sudden they're in this situation and they think, my goodness gracious, what am I going to do? So we have this foundational program that helps them become strong leaders. They become confident, they become competent, which is always a nice thing. And it's really about recognizing who are they from a unique perspective and what can I bring to the table. So that's just a little bit about People Think and a little bit about who I am.
And why do you do what you do now? What kind of drove you to get into this?
Yeah. So I come out of a corporate environment, I come out of tech. And I was always in the area of people where I was designing programs on how to attract, how to develop, and how to retain top talent. And when I left corporate, I recognized, well, wait a minute, if I'm going to do something on my own, I get to do what I want to do. I mean, isn't that the fun part of it? So I thought, what do I love? And what do I love is leadership and team development. So I was like, okay, then. So that's why I started People Think, because I had a real passion for development and a real passion to help people. As I said earlier, it's really about inspiring people to be more than, and inspiring teams to be more than. And I get great joy from watching those progressions. So the why behind it is kind of selfish, but you start your own company, you get to be
There
selfish.
you go. But also, it's we always tease like once you discover what your gift is and what you're good at and what your passion is, it's not selfish to share it with the world. Like it's actually the opposite. So you're supposed to share that with everybody else.
I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, you
So
got to
I'm
look
being
at it.
selfless and not selfish. All right. I learned
There
something.
you go.
Love it.
Um, yeah, which takes us to how we met, which is through an interesting group I found on Facebook. Facebook can be hit or miss, but found a group called Need a Guest and met Karen there and we had a conversation. She also has a podcast called Let's Talk Leadership and it's TAWK. So for all the East Coasters out there with the accents, we apparently here in Philly we have a very unique accent, which I didn't realize until I was probably in my teens. That is a very specific dialect from this side of the world.
Correct.
Um, and we had a conversation. I was a guest on your podcast with the launch of my book, which focuses on leadership, more geared towards women. And one of the things that's interesting for me that's happened as a side effect to the book coming out and the whole premise for my book, what we talked about is like being a woman in a male dominated world. I've met so many incredible women in the last like 2 months alone already, and you were one of them. And have expanded my circle. So it's been a really cool experience and something that I didn't kind of plan on and see coming, but a really good positive side effect to having the courage to put that book out into the world.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
So
And courage is really, that's exactly right, because we're smart, obviously, very obviously. And yet to be able to take it out of our head and put it somewhere where we're really putting ourselves out there is and can be scary. And so to have the courage to do that, hats off to you. Really wonderful. And again, it gives people a kind of a map on how not to do what we had to do in order to grow up. into this world.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's my goal. I'm like, if it can get a little easier for each generation
Yes,
of women, especially,
exactly.
because unfortunately the statistics are still not fabulous,
Yeah,
but we're working on it. But like, if I can make it a little easier for my daughter's generation, then I'll feel like I kind of did my part in everything. So, and that's one of the things I loved about the fact that you're focused on that emerging leader.
yes,
And for me, when I realized in like the family business that I was going to have to step into a leadership role,
yeah,
thankfully I had the awareness, which I think you mentioned earlier too, of what kind of leader do I want to be? And
yes,
having like taking the time to figure that out for myself. I think a lot of people probably miss that step and you
absolutely.
get kind of stuck where people want you. And then it's like, oh, wait, maybe this isn't really great. So, and in that note, in your world, what's a good fit look like for you in terms of who you're looking to partner with and work with? I always tell people I want it to be a good fit both ways. Like
Yeah,
all of the things that I do, I got like the entrepreneur with lots of hats on, but in all
yeah,
of my endeavors, I'm like, I need it to be a good fit both ways. I need it to be, like you said earlier, I want to bring you joy. I want you to bring me joy. I want this to be
yeah,
positive at the end of the day. So, what's
yeah.
that look like for you in your world?
Yeah, so for the Keep It Real leadership program, it's really focused as both of us have just said about the new and emerging leader. And so what I look for are companies 1,000 employees or less.
Right.
They're growing incredibly fast. They do not have any kind of development programs in place, or if they do, very little. They might have one HR person in the role and who just does not have time to create content and be able to not only create it but train it as well. And that the people within the organization, those employees, really want to grow, and they're saying, okay, I can be ready, however I need some help before I get there. Because really smart people recognize too that, I'm great at this, and I may not be great at leadership because I don't know anything about it. Leadership is a set of competencies. So just because I'm good at something doesn't mean I'm going to be a great leader. It
Right.
means that I have to learn particular competencies in order to be able to take over those roles. So that's the 1,000 employees or less, maybe one HR person, growing really fast, do not have the leadership bench strength to scale the company, and want to promote from within with the talented people that they have.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely like oftentimes the missing piece of the puzzle is somebody's really great at their job, so you want to promote them. But if they don't have the training to get to the next level, you almost kind of unfortunately set them up to fail. Not on
Correct.
purpose, but, and
Right.
so that's a good, I think, connector is like, okay, so let's give you the skills you need to get to that next level successfully, and
Yes.
help you to grow and expand.
And most people really don't spend the time thinking through it.
Right.
And it's because we're all so busy and we're all checking boxes and we've all got to do this and we've got to do that. And before you know it, it's the end of the day and you're exhausted. So spending some time and really thinking about who you are as a leader and who you want to be, and then learning those skills is imperative to be a great leader.
Yeah, and one of the things I discovered in the process actually of writing my book, in the beginning, I didn't think I was what I considered a leader to be because my definition was all wrong. And you discover that, oh no, I actually am really good at this. And I do have,
Yeah.
some of the natural capabilities and kind of tendencies that go with. And always tell people, I think, like, there are good leaders and then there are great leaders. And the
Yes.
goal should be to
Right.
become a great leader and to continue to kind of strive and grow. That's why from the book, it's Women on the Rise, because I think you should
Yeah.
always be working on kind of getting to the next level, um,
Correct.
and not
And
get
always,
kind of
and
comfortable.
yeah, and thinking about that next level. And I just don't want, from a listener perspective, remember there are really crummy, crummy, crummy leaders out there. And you do not want to learn those competencies. In fact, you want to be aware of them and think, oh, I'm never going to do that. Yeah. So pay attention to the good role models, and really try to emulate some of that instead of the bad role models. Although I think they're really fabulous because you learn, oh, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So it's a learning process, and leaders cannot stop learning.
Right.
As soon as they do, mm, that's not a good thing for anyone.
Yeah, I tease that like the only true constant is change, which is kind of feels backwards, but it's the
Yep.
truth. So you kind of have to stay ahead of the game and, like you said, on your toes a little bit and not get too comfortable anywhere. And so, from what you've seen in your work across, all the different areas you've been through so far in life, any kind of tips that you would share with either people looking to grow their team into leadership roles? And I always feel like to a certain degree, if you're at the kind of top of the food chain and you're in that, I don't even like the word boss anymore personally. I feel like you should be a leader, you shouldn't be a boss. So
Right.
if you're in that leadership role already, we should all be hoping to elevate everyone in our presence in their own leadership roles as well. So tips for those that are already there to help their team kind of move forward, and maybe for those that are looking to enhance their skills, what would you say you've kind of seen the do's and don'ts of leadership development?
Yeah, and it's for both. It's for the leader, current leader, and the emerging leader. And the first thing, hands down, is self-awareness.
Right.
What am I great at? What am I not so great at? What am I going to have to develop? And really look at what I call internal barriers. What are those things that have stopped you before? And they're going to stop you again. So the self-awareness is key. In that self-awareness place is everyone needs to be really clear about their values, because values are how you make your decisions.
Mhm.
So that whole self-awareness piece takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort. So whether you're a leader or an emerging leader, both both groups really have to pay attention to self-awareness. And if you've done any of those exercises before, do them again, because
Mhm.
this is a point in time and you just never know what circumstances will have shifted the way that you view the world, what your internal barriers are, what you need to develop. That's number one. Number two is be yourself. In Keep It Real, we talk about be the leader only you can be. You can take pieces of leaders that you've emulated and you think, oh my goodness, I'd love to be able to do this. You can take the pieces of the bad leaders and say, I'm never going to do this. At the end of the day, who are you? And how do you bring your unique self into this world? I'm not you, you're not me. I don't want to be you, you don't want to be me. So really own who you are as a leader. That's number two. And again, for both sets, the leader that's in place and the emerging. And we just talked about this learning. You cannot stop. You cannot say, okay, I've learned it all. No, you really haven't. I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. You got to keep learning and you have to be curious about that learning. So those are the three things that I would be self-aware, love your uniqueness, and don't stop learning, or keep learning is what I'll say.
And now, have you seen, just out of curiosity, I think culture and core values became this big thing for a while, where like everybody was like core values, core values, core values, culture, culture, culture. Do you feel a little bit of resistance nowadays? Like people are like, oh, been there, done that, we're over it. Because I always tell people like they think, oh, it's kind of the fluffy stuff. And I think you and I talked about this in our previous conversation. Like the soft skills are almost more important than the technical and hard skills. And that whole thing about culture and, values. I tell people like if you have kids, if you're a parent, like think about house rules.
Yeah, yeah,
Like we have non-negotiables in my house, and like it's not a very long list. Like it can't be 20.
yeah,
It should be like 3 to 5. But in terms of what's non-negotiable for you and what are you gonna really have to and be willing to hold the line on. But I feel like now we've gotten a little like squishy around the edges when people say, "Oh, there's a culture and core values," and I think it really is critical and a huge building block to having a successful foundation in
correct.
any organization. So, have you seen that as well in your work in the last couple of years?
Um, Do I talk, do people talk about that a little bit? And I say, and yes, the answer is yes, of course. And what I say to people is, you know what? It's all about you. So if you think that your corporate culture values are not aligned with yours, okay, that's fine. Or if you think they're squishy, that's fine. What are yours? What are your values? And then you want to go back into that organization. I don't care what's written on the walls. What you want to see is how are they operating? So if you're in an organization, people join an organization because of their values, and people leave an organization because of the values. End of story. I mean, compensation comes into play and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, if I don't map to the organization I'm working with in terms of foundational who I am and the values of the organization, it won't work. That's why I left corporate America. And that's why I left my last tech job, because my values were no longer aligned. So people can call it squishy. People can call it anything they want. However, it is how you run your life. And if you're not willing to take some time to figure those out, so be it. But I feel that strongly about it. And there's not a coaching gig I do. There's not a team development gig I do. There isn't a leadership gig I do where I don't talk about values.
Yeah, and I think I said it is. We always the word awareness is a really good one and a big one, and something to remember is that, it's a hard state to stay in, but
Yeah.
it's really important. So, like, when you let this stuff go to the back of your brain and subconscious and back burner and not important, I think sometimes we mix up what's really critical. It's like those 4 quadrants, like urgent and,
Yes.
important and not urgent and not important. I think we live in the wrong boxes a little bit too much sometimes and
Oh,
forget that, this may not seem urgent, but it's really important. And if you don't have it dialed in, it's gonna become urgent and important at the very bad time. You have
exactly.
to deal with it when you don't want to deal with it. So, yeah, I always do it's like, what do they say? The fastest way to get something done is to slow down.
Yes,
So,
and
like,
it's the
if
truth.
you get that dialed in at the beginning, it just makes life so much easier as you're building from there. So,
And it takes time in the beginning, and people don't want to take the time. If you take the time, then everything else can be built. If you have a foundation that's not stable, the building's going to fall down. It's no
right,
different than when you're building your leadership journey.
right. Anything else that comes to mind that you've seen a lot or big red flag, please avoid?
I mean, in
Like,
terms
we
of
tease about the
leadership.
lessons learned, so I tease that I
Oh,
wrote this book, I'm like, "My daughter may not read it, she may not listen to me," like, I was chatting with another lady the other day, and she said, "I have a cousin," so she's like, you can tell her been there, done that, she's like, "I'm still gonna try it myself," and she's like, "Alright, good luck with that," so
yeah, yeah.
sometimes we, get a little stubborn in our own position and kind of who we are and what we think we know. Anything else that
Y- y-
feels kind of important to you to share before we
Um,
wind down?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to the learning piece in terms of what you just said in terms of stubbornness. So, I had a performance review, well, more than once, but one of them that stands out in my head is, my boss told me that I'm a little stubborn. I'm like, me? Stubborn? Kidding. I said, I would like to think I'm tenacious. And we decided that the word was tenacious.
Right.
And you know what? I love that word. And when I talk about self-awareness, when I talk about learning, when I talk about your uniqueness, you have to be strong and tenacious in your belief, because people are going to say, no, 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 no. There's going to be naysayers in your life. There's going to be negative Nellies in your life. And if you can hold on, and if you can say, oh no, this is what I believe, and be tenacious
Mhm.
in that belief system, you will go far. And you can't give up. I mean, that's the whole thing about being tenacious. And so again, we laughed about it so hard about stubborn. I'm like, I am not, I'm tenacious. So, which kind of sums up what the whole conversation was like. And it's the truth. You gotta believe. You just have to believe, and you can't give up. Stay strong, be tenacious, and pretend you're a pit bull and just hold on
There
and
we
don't
go.
let go, even if people just say, "No." get rid of the naysayers. Like, who needs them? Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been focused on this year is following the energy. So
Yeah.
like there's good tired and there's bad tired at the end of the day. I'm like, I want to be good tired. So I want to be around people that I'm going to use up my energy, but it's going to be in a good way. So, and back to your stubborn, I am a Taurus, so I get a gold star. When I was little, my mom always told me, she said, if you turn your stubbornness into determination, then it's no longer negative. Now it's positive. So like,
Ooh, I
that's the
like
thing,
it.
when it get to the point where it's not like necessarily rooting your feet in the sand and refusing to move, but it's like you said, the tenacious and the determination, like I'm
Yeah.
gonna stand my ground when it matters
Yes.
and not apologize for it. And that goes back to what you said about the self-awareness. And the word I used is authenticity. Like I need to be me, I tease everybody has a bad day, but like 363 days a year, you're getting the real me. And
Yes.
I'm going to be authentic and I'm going to make sure that at the end of the day, I know that I did what I felt I needed to do, or I said what I felt I needed to say, in a loving way or, in a compassionate way. But at the same time, that honoring yourself, I think also, like, because this is Women for Women, is
Yeah.
one of the things that I've also really encouraged for me and for my daughter and everybody I encounter. Like sometimes we struggle with that a little bit and thinking that, you got to be a people pleaser. And it's like, no, if you feel it in your gut. So that's my favorite chapter in the book is trust your gut. And I tease
Nice.
that it doesn't apply to men because women's intuition is real and men's intuition is not a thing. But, when you've got that gut feeling, you like you said, you have to have that awareness and that authenticity and that tenaciousness to kind of stand firm sometimes, which can be tough,
Yeah.
but it's good for everybody in the end, I think. So,
And if you're clear about your values,
right.
those really hard decisions, as tough as they are, will allow you to sleep at night.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it is a very, very big thing that people, I think, make light of a little bit sometimes, but it is true. Like, if this isn't in alignment with who I said I am, then it's an easy yes or an easy no. And then you don't have to feel. It's interesting. A woman I heard speak a couple weeks ago said there's a difference between hurt and harm.
Mm.
So you might hurt somebody's feelings when you say no. And then we were talking about boundaries. She said, but you're not actually going to harm them. And so
Oh,
there's a difference there because she said a lot of times for us, we kind of feel I'm the same way. I know, like I feel guilty if I have to say no sometimes. Um, and it's true, you may hurt somebody's feelings because they wanted you to say yes, but if you didn't actually harm them, and then
just
it's okay. So just a
that.
little sidebar.
That's a good.
Um,
Yes, indeed.
so well, thank you for being here. And what's the best way for us to reach you if someone's interested in learning more about
Yeah.
who you are,
Yeah.
what you do? I know, like I said, we mentioned the podcast, which you can tell everybody about, and where they can find that, and then how to reach you as well.
Yeah, so reach me. Peoplethink is the peoplethink.biz, biz, and
Okay.
then it's Kate Colligan at peoplethink.biz if you wanted to email me. The Let's Talk Leadership podcast, I'm up to 43. It's crazy. And I speak to leaders of all levels in all industries. It's just been an amazing, happy, joyful place for me because I learned so much. And that's out on our YouTube channel, which is People Think SF, because I come from San Francisco, even though I'm in New York now.
Gotcha.
Love for you to go out and subscribe to that. That's been great. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can just search Karen Colligan and there
We'll
I am.
find you. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Thank
that's the other thing too, actually, which is cool about your podcast. One of the things I always encourage people to do when you talked about learning is learn outside of your industry
you. Mhm.
because you're going to pick up things that you may not get if you just stay kind of in that one lane.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool that you talk to leaders everywhere. Um, and they,
Academia, nonprofit, entrepreneurs. It's been astounding for me as a someone who likes to learn and
right.
will continue to learn how much I've learned about leadership. So it's great.
Well, thank you for joining me on my side this time.
I
And we'll definitely stay in touch. And if you want to find out more about Karen, you can check her out all the places she mentioned. And we'll see you back here next time for another episode of Women for Women.
Women for Women. Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.